One director threatened to shoot him when he tried to walk off the set. On another film, a producer allegedly suggested killing him for the insurance money. And yet, Klaus Kinski, a German actor notorious for his explosive temper and impossible behavior on set, appeared in more than 130 movies. I won't pretend I've seen them all, but I've seen enough to pick out 10 that are actually worth your time. Android came out in 1982, and Kinski once called it the first movie he'd made that children might actually enjoy. Well, before you gather the family around the television, you should know that this is a film where he plays a mad scientist secretly planning to transfer a woman's sexual experience into an artificial being. The story follows Dr. Daniel, played by Kinski, running a nearly abandoned space station with his android assistant Max. Life is quiet until a ship carrying 3 escaped criminals arrives at the station. Max is fascinated by humanity, and once he discovers that Daniel plans to deactivate him when a newer android is finished, he starts questioning where his loyalties lie. It came out just months after Blade Runner and explores some of the same territory, especially the question of what actually makes someone human, on a fraction of the budget. The whole thing was shot in 20 days for less than $1 million, and James Cameron worked on it as a design consultant before he was James Cameron. Kinski, true to form, reportedly refused to rehearse or even block scenes with his co-stars. Crawlspace was directed by David Schmoller, and it might be the purest distillation of Kinski chaos ever put on camera. He plays Karl Gunther, a landlord who is also the son of a Nazi doctor and who spies on his female tenants through the building's air ducts, picking them off one by one. He also plays Russian roulette with himself, as if leaving it to chance whether he's allowed to keep going. Kinski is completely in his element here. The behind-the-scenes stories deserve a mention of their own. Kinski reportedly got into 6 fistfights during the first 3 days of shooting and set the production back by 2 days. He banned the crew from saying action or cut, insisting on being filmed continuously so he could start and stop scenes whenever he felt like it. When Schmoller couldn't get permission to fire him, an Italian producer floated a different solution: kill Kinski and collect the insurance money. The plan, of course, never went anywhere, but crew members kept begging Schmoller to please kill Mr. Kinski. Years later, that line was used as the title of a 1999 documentary short about the production of Crawlspace. Venom, released in 1981, is notable mostly for pairing Klaus Kinski with another notorious troublemaker, Oliver Reed. The plot centers on a botched kidnapping in a London townhouse that spirals out of control when a deadly black mamba, accidentally switched with a harmless pet snake, ends up loose in the house alongside the hostages and their captors. Kinski plays the lead kidnapper, with Reed as his volatile accomplice. Tobe Hooper, best known for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was originally directing, but was replaced just 9 days into the shoot. Kinski later claimed that he and several others on set had joined forces to get Hooper removed. Piers Haggard stepped in with barely 10 days of preparation and somehow managed to pull together a coherent film anyway. More than that, I would say it is actually a very good one, and the climactic scene with the snake deserves a special mention. On set, Kinski and Reed fought constantly, with Reed provoking him throughout the shoot, and Kinski giving as good as he got. This was also, famously, the film Kinski chose over playing the villain in Raiders of the Lost Ark. He was very open about the reason. Venom paid much more, even though he hated the idea of filming in London. Director Jess Franco, sometimes described as the Hitchcock of exploitation cinema, worked with Klaus Kinski 4 times. I want to include 2 of those films here, starting with Count Dracula. Christopher Lee plays the Count, reprising the role he had already made famous in Hammer's Dracula films, but this version gave him something different to work with. Franco aimed to stay closer to Bram Stoker's novel, including the idea of Dracula beginning as an old man and gradually growing younger as he feeds. Klaus Kinski plays Renfield in an almost entirely silent performance, and the casting could not have been more perfect. From the moment we first see him flinging food around his cell, It is obvious that this Renfield is unhinged, and that is before he starts devouring his favorite snack, a stash of dead flies hidden in a box. And, as so often with Kinski, there is a behind-the-scenes story. He complained to Franco that they were not filming his scenes in a real asylum. Franco replied that he had considered it, until it occurred to him that they might not let Kinski out again. As for the film itself, it is visually hypnotic and has no shortage of atmosphere, even if it does feel rather drawn out at times. Jack the Ripper is the second Franco and Kinski film I want to mention here. It was also their final collaboration, and probably the perfect showcase for Kinski at his creepiest. Franco largely ignores the historical record and builds the film around Kinski's Ripper stalking the fog-soaked streets while Scotland Yard scrambles to catch him. The murders are brutal and linger on every ugly detail. Franco regular Lena Romay appears as one of his victims and meets a particularly unpleasant end. The film works surprisingly well as a gothic thriller and often feels like a Hammer horror. Just try to find a subtitled version because the English dub is almost unbearable. We have reached the halfway point, and the next improvised section is devoted to Kinski's work with Werner Herzog. Their relationship was so famously explosive that Herzog later made an entire documentary about it, My Best Fiend. Consider that a separate recommendation. But for now, I am sticking to 4 of the 5 feature films they made together, starting with Aguirre, The Wrath of God. This was their first collaboration, and it is a masterpiece. The film follows a Spanish expedition moving through the Amazon in search of El Dorado. When a smaller group is sent ahead, Kinski's Aguirre leads a mutiny and takes control. Obsessed with power and glory, he drives the men deeper into the jungle as their supplies disappear and everyone around him begins to die. By the end, he is completely lost in his own delusions, declaring himself the Wrath of God. All of this was made for around $370,000, using a camera Herzog had taken from the Munich Film School. He wrote the script in about 2.5 days, kept a few real names and events, and invented most of the rest. This tiny, chaotic production went on to become a major influence on Apocalypse Now, something Coppola himself later acknowledged. And I will not leave you without a behind-the-scenes story. Kinski once fired into a hut because the people inside were making too much noise, injuring an extra's finger. Later, when he tried to abandon the production, Herzog told him he would put 8 bullets into Kinski and save the 9th for himself. Kinski stayed. I mentioned Nosferatu the Vampyre in my video about the 5 greatest horror remakes of all time, and nothing has changed since then. Herzog made it as a tribute to Murnau's 1922 Nosferatu, with Kinski taking on the role of Count Dracula. He is magnificent. His Dracula is frightening, but also painfully lonely. And the sad, anxious speeches Herzog wrote for him are some of the best moments in the film. Woyzeck was Kinski's 3rd feature collaboration with Herzog, and Herzog began shooting it pretty much the day after Nosferatu wrapped, continuing in Czechoslovakia with the same crew. Kinski plays Franz Woyzeck, a lowly soldier constantly humiliated by everyone around him, especially his captain, who barely lets him keep a shred of dignity. Piece by piece, the abuse wears him down until he finally breaks. Herzog later said that Kinski never simply played a role, he exhausted himself completely. During the opening title sequence, a drill instructor was supposed to fake kick Kinski while he was doing push-ups. Kinski demanded that he do it for real. Jason Robards had already filmed around 40% of Fitzcarraldo before falling seriously ill and leaving the production. Mick Jagger, who played his assistant, also had to leave for a Rolling Stones tour, so Herzog removed the character completely. With the film in trouble and Herzog even considering taking the lead himself, Kinski stepped in. He plays an opera-obsessed dreamer in Peru who enters the rubber business to finance an opera house. His plan requires dragging a full-sized steamship over a mountain from one river to another. Unlike Kinski's darker characters in Herzog's earlier films, Fitzcarraldo is driven by a childlike dream of bringing opera to the jungle. Herzog won Best Director at Cannes, while the film received nominations from several major awards bodies. These famous shots of Kinski screaming at production manager Walter Saxer were filmed on the set of Fitzcarraldo. But Herzog deserves some attention here too. He refused to fake the central stunt with miniatures. Instead, he spent years figuring out how to pull a real steamship over a real hill, had full-sized ships built for the production, and brought in hundreds of local workers to make it happen. Werner Herzog and Klaus Kinski's fifth and final film together was Cobra Verde in 1987. By the end of production, Herzog had vowed never to work with Kinski again, and he never did. Cobra Verde still deserves a mention, as do several other Kinski films I watched for this video, including A Bullet for the General, The Counterfeit Traitor, and For a Few Dollars More. But if I have to choose just one final film for the list, it has to be The Great Silence. Maybe that is because I have a particular fondness for films that refuse to comfort the audience with a happy ending. In Snowbound, Utah, a mute gunslinger known as Silence is hired by a widow to take on the bounty hunter who killed her husband. That bounty hunter is Loco, played by Kinski, one of the coldest and most vicious villains in the Western genre. In case you have not seen the film, I will not spoil what happens, but I will leave you with one final Kinski story. During filming, he hurled an anti-Semitic insult at Frank Wolf, who plays Sheriff Burnett. Wolf lunged at him and had to be restrained. Kinski later claimed he had done it deliberately to help Wolf get into character. Whatever the truth, it did not stop them from appearing together again the following year in I Am Sartana, Your Angel of Death.